Hello. We're ready to read Chapter 10 of A Day of Rest by Edna Creekmore Carmen, my mom. The kids in the story are in the woods now, and even though they can't see them, they know that there are all kinds of wild animals like owls and raccoons and squirrels and maybe even a bobcat or something like that, watching them from the shadows. So we're ready for Chapter 10, and they come to the entrance of an old mine. Jim was beginning to wonder just how far the mine was. He should be getting home. His mother wouldn't stay until the singing was over. She would come home soon and expect him to be there to do the milking. However, Jim didn't say anything about starting home. Instead, he reached up and pulled a few large leaves from a low-hanging branch of a cucumber tree growing beside the stream. As they walked along, Jim idly made a hat out of the leaves by pinning them together with the rough stems. "That'll keep the sun off your head," he said as he placed the hat on Susan. Susan smiled her thanks to Jim. The part in her hair was hot again. The leaves were cool. The valley through which they were walking became wider and wider, while the hills on both sides became larger and larger. Gurgling around the clumps of bushes growing along its grassy banks, the little stream meandered from one side of the wide valley to the other. The bright sunlight glistened on the crystalline wings of the dragonflies hovering over its rippling surface. The hum of bees on the sweet red clover mingled with the clear call of the meadowlark. Gradually, the valley narrowed, and a hill closed the valley off. At the base of the hill, a flat area had been leveled off. Beyond the flat area, a square hole had been dug deep into the side of the hill. Bert and Jim and Susan left the meandering stream and started walking directly toward the black hole. A rustling in the underbrush, a sound of scurrying small feet, brought Susan to a sudden stop. She grabbed Bert's arm and held him. "Listen." A sharp squeak followed by swift small feet scampering through the underbrush broke the silence. "Rats from the mine," Bert explained casually, pointing toward the black hole in the hill beyond. "There." The three rejoined the stream at the base of the hill, where the murky, rusty brown water draining from a small pond below the mine mingled with the clear stream, clouding the clear, rippling water. As Bert and Susan and Jim walked beside the drainage ditch toward the mine entrance, the murky water became darker and darker until nothing could be seen beneath its oily surface. "We'll have to wade through the drain pool to get to the entrance," Bert said, as he plunged into the pond covered by yellow foam. Susan stopped at the edge of the pond and frowned at the repulsive water. The water was not deep. It scarcely came to Bert's ankles as he waded through the pond. However, the brown, oily water covered by a greenish-yellow scum was forbidding. Carefully, Susan placed a foot into the water, cringing as she felt her foot sink into the slimy silt beneath. The water bubbled and frothed around her ankle. Susan jerked her foot back, a foot covered with black, shiny, stinky ooze. "It won't hurt you, Susan," Jim encouraged from behind her. Susan dropped her foot back into the water and then placed the other one beside it. Her face screwed up in disgust. She made a tentative step forward and then stopped. Both feet mired in the slimy ooze. Jim stepped in the water beside Susan and took her hand. Bert was already out and climbing up the slippery bank of shale to get to the flat surface at the mine entrance. Holding her breath, Susan slid a foot forward. Then, heedless of the splashing of the filthy water, she let go of Jim's hand and ran through the scum and scrambled up the bank of shale, joining Bert as he leaned over to look into the dark depth of the mine tunnel. Ready to catch her if she fell, Jim followed Susan and was right behind her as she ran up to the mine entrance. The three stopped at the entrance. They could not see beyond a few feet into the square tunnel formed by logs at the sides and in the ceiling. In the darkness of the tunnel, tiny lights twinkled. "Well, let's go," Bert suggested and walked bravely a few feet forward. "Okay," Jim agreed as he followed Bert. "Let's go." A hollow echo came from the depths of the tunnel. "Okay," answered over and over again. The small points of light blinked out. High-pitched squeaks and splashes of small bodies drowned out the echo. Then suddenly all was silent, as deeper within the mine, the small points of light appeared again. Susan drew back. "There is something in there." "I told you," Bert said slowly. "Rats live in the mine." "Rats?" Susan backed still farther. "Oh, Susan," Bert was disgusted, "you're not afraid of rats." "They won't hurt you unless you corner them," Jim added. "Why, they are in the feed room at the barn all the time, and they come up into the attic of the house in the winter. You can hear their feet scratching as they climb up the walls, and then you hear bumps as they pull the sweet taters over the rafters. But they won't hurt you." "Now, if you were a sweet tater," Bert added, "you might have something to be afraid of. But you're a big girl. You can drive them away." Bert waved his hands in the air. "Shoo, rats!" The tiny lights blinked out as with a scurrying, scrambling, the rats turned and ran back into the security of the darkness. But Susan could still feel them in that darkness, just waiting. "Come on," Bert said in a disgusted voice. "The rats are gone now. They can't hurt you." "I don't like rats." Susan backed toward the entrance where the bright sunlight promised protection from the evils of the dark mine. "I'm going." Bert stubbornly took a few steps forward. Jim, not to be outdone, walked past Bert, and the two moved deeper and deeper into the darkness. "Don't," Susan objected. "I don't like it." "Fraidy cat, you can go home if you want to," Bert taunted. "Okay, I will," Susan yelled back, but made no move to leave. She did not know the way home. She had never been this far in the forest before. "No, don't go," Jim yelled. "We won't be long. Just wait there." "You'll get lost," Susan wailed, suddenly very much afraid. She could no longer see the boys. "No, we won't." Bert's voice came from the darkness of the mine. "We can see you standing there at the mouth of the tunnel," Jim said soothingly. "Yes, we can see you," Bert agreed. Susan could hear the two boys splashing in the water and then a thud. "Ouch!" "What?" "Bert!" Susan screamed. "I'm okay. I just stumbled into something. I wish I had a light. I can't tell what it is, but it smells something awful." All was quiet for a while, although Susan imagined she could hear the two boys breathing hard as they were working at something. Scattered words of their conversation came to her. "It's maybe, who?" "Tell your dad." And that's the end of chapter 10.